voluntary, all-day kindergarten for 4- and 5-year-olds at a cost ultimately down the road of almost $1 billion. Frank Cleese, you get this first one. Do you agree with this approach of Dr. Pascal's, which he has recommended to the Ontario government?
Well, first of all, Steve, let me commend Dr. Pascal for what I think is a very thorough report. I think what he's addressed is the reality of Ontario in 2009. We have real challenges today in terms of families where both parents are working, single-parent families, and we want people to be independent, self-sufficient. There's no question that childcare is a serious barrier to that. I've reviewed the report.
Do you like it?
Well, I like the report from the standpoint, first of all, that it's optional, that it gives parents choice. I think that's ultimately important. I think what it does is it addresses the patchwork system that we have for childcare today. At the end of the day, parents should have the choice in terms of where they want their 4- and 5-year-old children to be for the full day. There are some real challenges, though. Number one is, how are we going to pay for this? Where is the space going to come from to put all of these additional classrooms in place? There are some real challenges here. In principle, I support ensuring that parents have options available to them. At the end of the day, where's the best place for children 4 and 5 years old? I believe it's with parents. But for those parents who cannot take on that full responsibility, I think it's appropriate that reasonable alternatives are made available.
That sounds like a qualified endorsement. Christine Elliott, what do you say on this?
Well, I would also commend Dr. Pascal for a very far-reaching report. I haven't had a chance to review the whole thing in detail yet, but I would say, generally speaking, that I support early childhood education. It is critically important for our children in the first few years of their life to set them off on a path of lifelong learning. And certainly as we progress in Ontario from a manufacturing-based economy into a knowledge-based economy, education starting as early as possible is very important. But I do have some concerns with respect to the implementation. I think that the McGuinty government has been disingenuous when they say that they're going to be able to implement this by 2010. I think that the cost is huge, and we need to be very mindful of that as we contemplate how it can possibly be phased in.
Cost is $1 billion ultimately down the road, but the upfront for next year would be $200 million or so, I think. Can we afford that?
Not the way this government's spending money, I wouldn't say so.
Randy Hillier, what do you say?
Well, I see this in a little bit different light, Steve. This is just a backdoor approach to nationalized daycare. That's what this report is advocating for. It's the backdoor of bringing in the Paul Martin and Jean Chrétien national daycare program. This, we've seen it. They're talking $1 billion. How are we going to pay for that? How many more new taxes are we going to bring in to pay for this?
Pascal says every dollar you invest up front, you will save 17 down the road.
Listen, to have state babysitters being paid $70,000, $80,000 a year, we're confusing education and babysitting with this report. We have challenges in our public education system. We should be addressing those, not compounding the problems by making it into a babysitting service as well.
Tim Hudak?
Yeah, I'm not as keen as a couple of my colleagues on where Pascal is going here. I mean, certainly, you know, Debbie and I are going through this thinking ourselves, their daughter who's 20 months old, thinking down the road. And parents will find it attractive, particularly in schools that have extra space, to see if you can have daycare there, especially the mom or dad who's shuffling between a daycare and a school currently. But the path he's going down looks to me to be more of a big government, centrally run, big union, one-size-fits-all approach. And Steve, you know where that gets us. That means less money going to parents and less money going into care. I think we need to recognize that not all parents make the same choices as others. And that's why I brought forward, as part of my campaign, income splitting for parents who choose to have a spouse stay at home or work part-time. Others prefer informal care. So I don't like the notion of Pascal putting all eggs in this one big centrally run basket.
Just as long as you're on it, have you and Debbie figured out how you're going to do this?
A little bit depends on the 27th, I think, as a matter of fact. But no, I mean, we will look at different options. Debbie is currently staying home with Miller. It's a couple years down the road before Miller enters into JK or or a kindergarten. But you know, I do not like the notion of a take it or leave it big government-run program that Pascal's recommending.
Just, we should clarify, Debbie's your wife, obviously, Debbie Hutton. Okay, Frank, please.
I think we have to be fair to Dr. Pascal because it's not take it or leave it. The fact is that he is recommending choice, and you know, not everyone has the privilege that Tim and Debbie have of having one parent stay at home, and I think those are the realities that we have to cope with in this province of ours. Having said that, I do believe that before our education system spends an additional $1 billion on 4- and 5-year-old full-time schooling, we should be addressing a real issue, and that is what we're doing with children with special needs and children with autism. If there's an additional $1 billion or $500 million, we should be focusing that on ensuring that children with autism have the same opportunities in our education system as every other child.
So you'd take, if it's 500 million or a billion, whatever it is, that would be a higher priority for you than doing this early childhood education?
Without question. I think it's unconscionable that in this province of ours, parents of children with autism have to mortgage their homes just so that their children can have the basic learning skills. It is something that I believe is a serious mark on this government.
Christine Elliott, what do you say on that?
Well, I would agree with Frank. I think that there is a serious lack of attention being paid to children with special needs in our existing school system. The situation with autistic children in particular, I think, has been shameful on the part of this government, and we need to do more. If we're purporting to be able to provide a quality education for all children, then we should do that.
Randy Hillier, let me give you the last word on this part. Dr. Pascal was in our studio a few days ago talking about this thing, and he did say that if you bring in this policy, that learning disabilities, ADHD, the problems that young children have will get identified earlier, and therefore the ability to tackle those problems will get solved earlier. Therefore, there won't be bigger, more expensive problems down the road.
Well, it's very seldom that you see a report that actually advocates for less government involvement in people's lives. And you know, there is a role for families. Families have a responsibility. And Steve, this battle was fought in the last federal election, and people passed judgment on it. We recognized that the most effective way to bring babysitting and daycare services is assisting families with tax credits and not creating a national daycare system. But also, this is going to take away choice. When the state offers up these services in the fashion that they're talking about, the daycare providers on the street, the moms, the stay-at-home moms who are providing daycare, they are not going to have that customer base anymore. The state will have taken it from them.
Okay. I think one of the areas where you four have expressed your strongest disagreements, and after all, part of why we're all here tonight is to give not just Conservative Party members, but also the general public the sense of how you differ so they can make their judgments about you either in Markham on the 27th or further down the road for whichever one of you wins. The biggest area of disagreement, I guess, is on the issue of what to do about the Ontario Human Rights Commission, the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal. And I think, let's start by getting your four positions on the record, then we'll get into some discussion about this. Christine Elliott, what do you want to do with the Ontario Human Rights Commission / Tribunal?
We need to significantly reform it, but we should not be scrapping it, because that is a politically toxic issue that would cause us to lose the election next time. It's the same as faith-based funding. It's not something that people want, and we need to steer clear of abolishing it.
Why do you think it's a toxic issue for the party?
Because it's a complicated issue, and the headlines will be that Conservatives want to get rid of human rights. And it's like the faith-based funding idea that it takes time to explain it to people in the context of an election. You don't have that luxury. And I think that anything that looks to doing away with people's human rights is not something that people in Ontario want.
Randy Hillier, what do you want to do about it?
Listen, I brought out this policy on my first day. We know that the human rights commissions and tribunals are creating injustice in this province. Every one of the candidates in this contest have already stated that there are fundamental problems with the human rights commissions. We have to stand up and defend what is right, not paint ourselves into a corner, not attack ourselves on doing what's right.
So what would you like to do?
Hate speech is in the criminal code of this country. We can protect